Hi there. In this week's edition of The Wrap, we're looking at wins for gender-based violence in our court system and how things could ideally work for other survivors. We unpack the motion of no confidence in Cyril Ramaphosa, plus give you the latest on Russia, that Will Smith slap, and celebrate Miriam Makeba. So, let's dive into your weekly update of empowering and easy-to-understand news brought to you by Verashni Pillay, myself, and the Explained Akosa team. First up, our take, when the system works. Women in gender-based violence-related cases notoriously face secondary victimization and are denied justice when they pursue the legal route. But in the past week, there have been two important court victories in gender-based violence cases. Last week, Ntutuko Shoba was found guilty of the murder of his then heavily pregnant girlfriend, Verashni Pillay, in June 2020. You'll remember that was that horrific case where she was found hanging from a tree and she'd been killed. The turnaround from the time of the murder to conviction was heartening. As journalist Mandy Wiener wrote, in less than 2 years, a suspect was arrested, a key state witness was secured, a deal was done, and evidence was laid in court, which ultimately led to a successful prosecution. Thanks to stellar work by the National Prosecuting Authority and investigators working under the watchful eye of the media, Shoba will most likely face jail time. Secondly, a judgment by the Western Cape High Court last week affirmed the right of a gender-based violence survivor to speak out about her acknowledged rape. The model came out on Twitter outing her rapist in 2019. Her rapist hauled her to court, arguing her claims were defamatory and were costing his business. He is a designer of urban wear based in Cape Town. A magistrate court found in his favor, stripping the woman of her right to speak out. But last week, a judgment by the Western Cape High Court found that the woman had the right to name her perpetrator. Judge Robert Henney said the probabilities overwhelmingly favor her version, which is that he had admitted that he had raped her and apologized. She was therefore justified to call him a rapist. There was no need for her to lay a charge against him and to have him prosecuted and convicted to be labeled as a rapist based on the evidence of this case. Now, that's a groundbreaking judgment for other women out there. These judgments are great indicators that while things may be bad in the criminal justice system, there are glimmers of hope. As Wiener wrote in response to the Verashni Pillay case, for now we must acknowledge this case has shown us what is possible when everything works, when there is good, solid police work, when there are capable and passionate prosecutors, and when the criminal justice system delivers justice. Imagine if every victim received that kind of justice. It is possible. Moving on to our big story, secret ballots make sense. During Jacob Zuma's presidency, the corruption-tainted politician faced one vote of no confidence after another. None was successful, but the process saw an interesting shift. At the height of public and internal ANC anger with Zuma in 2017, opposition parties successfully lobbied for a secret ballot. This meant that ANC members of parliament who held a majority could vote with their conscience and not be disciplined for voting against the increasingly unpopular president. The numbers showed over 20 renegade ANC MPs did so, even if Zuma did narrowly escape being ousted that way. So the public watched keenly when President Cyril Ramaphosa's administration faced its first motion of no confidence at the National Assembly yesterday. Typically, though, given the ANC's dominance, motions of no confidence by opposition parties can be little more than a PR move. But the DA presented the latest motion with an interesting twist, a motion of no confidence against Ramaphosa's entire cabinet. Still, it was a doomed bid from the start and it failed. A second motion of no confidence in Ramaphosa himself was attempted by the African Transformation Movement, otherwise known as ATM. Now, they're a more radical voice of the RET faction that has spun out into its own party. That motion was thrown out for now, however, as the party is awaiting a ruling on allowing a secret ballot. We'll spare you the details of the endless arguing in Parliament over this yesterday and today. Now, if the ATM were to get court approval for a secret ballot at a later stage, it would make for an interesting litmus test of Ramaphosa's internal popularity in the ANC ahead of a crucial internal ANC election. Now, two recent sets of national political research suggest that Ramaphosa will win the ANC elective conference in December, but is then unlikely, or rather likely, to lead a coalition government from 2024 as the ANC heads into its era of decline. This was written by Farrell Haffajee in the Daily Maverick this week. So what she's basically saying is that Ramaphosa will win the ANC election, but he will not win the war. The ANC is likely to lose its dominance and be in a coalition government as soon as 2024. That's in 2 years' time. Now, Haffajee says seasoned analysts say Ramaphosa will face noise, but not a serious runoff in December. But the bad news is neither will he win a victory wide enough to secure a mandate for the kind of deep reform South Africa needs. For that, We need a deep shift in South Africa's politics. And maybe allowing secret ballots as a matter of course and not making opposition parties have to fight for it is a step in the right direction. Moving on to our briefs, a bad punchline and a smack on the face. You've probably heard by now about that slap. On Sunday night, comedian Chris Rock joked about actress Jada Pinkett Smith's shorn head at the 2022 Oscars, saying, "Jada, I love you. I can't wait for G.I. Jane 2," referencing the 1990s movie that saw the lead character famously shave her head. Her husband, fellow actor Will Smith, laughed at first, but Jada appeared unimpressed, rolling her eyes. She has previously revealed her struggles with alopecia, a condition that results in severe hair loss. Smith then marched onto the stage and struck a visibly shocked Rock in the face before returning to his seat, shouting twice, "Keep my wife out of your effing mouth." And I'm obviously not going to say the whole thing, but he said it twice. Now, the fallout was immediate, with many celebrities calling Smith out. It was later revealed that event organizers asked Smith to leave, but he refused to do so. The Academy, which hosts the Oscars, said it has initiated a formal review of the incident and disciplinary proceedings. Action could include being suspended or expelled, like Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby have been. The Academy could even revoke Smith's Oscar or make him ineligible for future awards. Smith won't face any legal consequences, however, as Rock declined against pressing charges. Smith shortly afterwards won the Best Actor Oscar for his portrayal of Richard Williams, father of tennis superstars Venus and Serena. This is, of course, a huge accolade for Smith. He apologized to the Academy in his speech and the next day to the Williams family and to Rock, saying his behavior was unacceptable and inexcusable. What was interesting was that in his speech, he noted that Richard Williams was the kind of man who fought for his family, in a sense almost justifying his behavior. It was an odd move. Now, Rock was widely praised for de-escalating the situation in the moment, but called out for his insensitive joke. The incident has shone the light on the free pass comedy has had in making jokes at the expense of other people. He has said he will respond in time to the incident. And sadly, the altercation has overshadowed important awards on the night. A historic win for the deaf cast of Coda, a film about a deaf family that snapped up the best picture of the night amid other awards. There were other important wins for diversity too, and Smith himself picked up his first Oscar. It's a pity he let his emotions get the better of him. As Denzel Washington apparently told Smith on the night, "At your highest moment, be careful. That's when the devil comes for you." On to some other entertainment news locally. Mama Africa celebrated in style. Miriam Makeba would have turned 90 earlier this month. 14 years after her death, the celebrated South African singer continues to inspire artists and audiences across the globe. So it was fitting that African-American musician Somi Kakoma performed her Makeba tribute album for the first time this month at the iconic Apollo Theatre in New York City. That's the place where Harlem, jazz, and so on really found its name, and careers like Ella Fitzgerald's was made. The performance featured internationally acclaimed South African artists Thandiswe Mazwai and Msaki. Somi's album Zenzile, the reimagination of Miriam Makeba, took 7 years to make and was released this month. The performance was a poignant moment as Makeba performed at the same venue in September 1961. Makeba's very existence was a revolution in the space at the time, and she famously introduced isiZulu and isiXhosa music to Western audiences. Who can forget the click song? Makeba also championed the fight for democracy in South Africa during her long and painful exile from her homeland during apartheid. Somi has now brought the concert to our shores with a show at the State Theatre in Tshwane over the weekend. It featured South African musicians Thandiswe Mazwai, Msaki, Nduduzo, Makatini, and Sipho Hopsticks Mabuse. I wish I was there. As Somi said, "I owe her, we all do." In a time of escalating nationalism and xenophobia globally, voices like Makeba's and others remind us of our commonality and power in unity. Moving on to international news, tentative moves towards peace in Russia and the Ukraine. It has been 5 weeks since Russia invaded Ukraine, leading to thousands of lives lost, millions of people displaced, and several cities destroyed. This week, the two nations restarted peace talks, and we're seeing tiny signs of progress. Officials from both nations met for in-person talks in Turkey this week, but no action or resolution has been made so far, not even a short-term ceasefire or major progress towards a broader peace deal. But Russia did announce yesterday that it would drastically reduce military combat in 2 key areas in the Ukraine to boost trust amid peace talks: the capital, Kiev, and the northern city, Cherniv. Still, officials from Ukraine, the UK, and the US are treading cautiously. One Ukrainian official says they are preparing for a major Russian offensive against other areas of eastern Ukraine. They're particularly worried after Russia's chief negotiator said his country's latest actions were, quote, not a ceasefire, end quote, but that they were hoping to gradually reach a de-escalation of conflict. It would be weeks, if not months, before we see some end to a war that has already ruined millions of lives and livelihoods. The two parties are set to continue talks via video conference on Friday, and we're hoping for the best. On to some local economic news. Surviving economically has become an extreme sport, and now South Africa's unemployment has hit another record high. Our unemployment rate increased to a dismal 35.3% during October to December 2021. That's up slightly from 34.9% during the same period the previous year. Basically, we keep producing more adults entering the workforce, but not enough jobs to absorb them. We've previously explained what South Africa needs to do to change our unemployment problem, and basically it's structural reforms and cutting of government spending. We also told you last week that the South African Reserve Bank increased the repo rate by 0.25 percentage point. It's now 4.25%, which brings the prime rate, which is the rate that you lend at, to 7.75%, plus whatever your bank adds to that. Now, this was not unexpected. In fact, you should expect lots more of these as the bank gets the rate back to where it used to be. After all, we saw the bank dramatically drop the repo rate over the pandemic to try to put some cash in our pockets. It used to be as high as 7% in 2018, and it reached an all-time low of 3.5% in 2020. But the risk is that inflation gets out of control. Interest rate adjustments help maintain the value of the money in your pockets, but it also increases the payments on a loan. If you're considering fixing your mortgage rate given further increases on the horizon, read up carefully about that. There is an interesting Business Tech article about that. Now, we're not the only country going through this. Central banks in 23 countries have raised rates so far this month, even the US Federal Reserve. On the bright side, the rand is at its strongest level this year, thanks to high commodity prices like gold, platinum, and palladium. Higher commodity prices like these also lift other parts of our economy along with mining profits. This means mines pay more in tax, which might mean tax revenues could exceed expectations again this year and bail us out again. There's talk the government will use that extra cash to give us some relief with fuel costs driven partly by the Russian war. Please, we hope so. The rand's strong performance is also due to South Africa strangely being seen as more stable globally, despite the local doom and gloom. As Isak Odendaal, investment strategist at Old Mutual Wealth, puts it, the rand benefits from higher commodity prices, but perhaps also from the fact that South Africa suddenly looks like one of the more stable corners of the emerging markets universe for investors. He adds, few would have expected that South Africa would end up as a safe haven during a global crisis, but here we are. So we hope that made a convincing argument for Ramaphosa to woo investors at the Dubai Expo he attended this past week, because goodness knows we need more investment. On to some feminine news. Few women enjoy that time of the month. The cramps, raging hormones, cravings, and general discomfort makes those days our least favorite. Now, single-use sanitary products like pads and tampons, though effective, hurt the environment. Silicone menstrual cups and rings have offered an antidote to the pollution problem, but they are not for everyone. Now, period panties are available across Mr. Price stores in South Africa at 150 Rand each about. They fit like snug undies apparently and don't look that much bulkier. The panties are made up of 4 layers of different materials and can hold up to 50 milliliters of fluid, compared to a tampon which can hold up to 12 milliliters only. Now, depending on your flow, you can wear them almost all day, and you don't need to wear a pad or tampon as well. These panties are hand and machine washable and can be used for up to 2 years. Now, in a country where lack of access to sanitary products often sees girls missing out on school, this could be a helpful intervention, not to mention the environmental benefit it could have. Plastic and non-compostable material in period products can take hundreds of years to decompose. But not all brands are getting it right on women, though. Local alcohol delivery service Wine Time has come under fire for an advert on the side of a van. It depicts a woman with her mouth agape having a bottle of wine poured down her throat. 2 complainants took the delivery service to SA's Advertising Regulatory Board, saying the advert objectified and sexualized women, adding that representing women in this way perpetuates rape culture in South Africa. The ARB ruled in favor of the complainant, saying the ad was in breach of their standards while also highlighting the dangerous relationship between high alcohol consumption and gender-based violence in South Africa. Finally, NFT saves South Africa's prized heritage site. One of South Africa's iconic national heritage sites, Lily's Leaf Museum, may be able to keep its doors open after a non-fungible token of Nelson Mandela's original warrant of arrest was auctioned for a staggering 1.9 million rand over the weekend. Before we skip ahead, let's address the newish acronym in the room, NFTs. An NFT is a digital asset that represents real-world objects like art, music, and videos. They are bought and sold online and are usually made with the same underlying software as cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. They are generally one of a kind or at least one of a very limited run, as is this case. Daily Maverick notes, the winning buyer, who prefers not to be named at this stage, will not own the original actual arrest warrant, which remains the property of the museum, and they won't even own a copy. Rather, they will own the digital rights to a piece of history that will only appreciate in time. In addition, the buyer will be able to go and look at the document in the real document in the vault anytime it wants. Now, the first buyer of this NFT will be entitled to 5% of any subsequent sale of additional digital versions of the warrant in perpetuity. Now, the heavily indebted museum announced last year it would close its doors indefinitely following years of financial woes. These were exacerbated by the hit the tourism industry took during the pandemic. Last year, the museum received about 720,000 rand after an auction of an NFT of a pen gun owned by Olivia Tambo, Times Live reported. Now, to recap the history, in the early 60s, Lily's Leaf in Rivonia served as the secret headquarters and nerve center for various parties in their struggle against the apartheid regime. When police got word of the underground operations, they raided the farm. 10 people, including Mandela, were put on trial on charges of sabotage. The Rivonia trial became one of the most pivotal moments in South Africa's history and preceded Mandela's 27-year imprisonment. Now, we're always wary of volatile currencies that change as fast as Cape Town's weather, but if this NFT is a solution to keep the doors of our prized history open, that's great news. Well, that's it from us at The Wrap, an award-winning product of Explain.co.za. Simple news summaries for busy people. The Wrap is sponsored by Explain's agency division. We specialize in content marketing for purpose-driven organizations, often with a pan-African reach. Mail info at Explain.co.za for a quote. And furthermore, remember to share the love. Tell your friends to sign up for the updates at Explain.co.za/subscribe. Till next time, goodbye from the team.